Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. We welcome you to this webinar. The title, as you already may have seen, is GenAI in Education, an Open Conversation. So today I will be the host. My name is Simone Abbiati, and I'm the Head of Training and Education here at Squirrel in Zurich. And I have the pleasure to have with me today 3 friends at this point. The first one is Lee Mackenzie from Liverpool Hope University. Hello, Lee. And the second is Karen Villalba, along with Heidi Selene Robles Noriega from Universidad del Norte, Barranquilla.
Hello. Hello. From Colombia.
So, GenAI in education, an open conversation. First of all, I'd like to set up the agenda of the discussion today. It will be an open discussion, so we will introduce some topics and probably share some insights, hopefully, but also we would like to discuss together the 4 of us and then eventually with you, with the Q&A. So I'm gonna start by introducing what AI how AI could be defined, what are language models, large language models, what is their relevance for education and in education, and why Squirrel is interested in having such a conversation, an open conversation with educators, with academics. Again, we come from the industrial perspective, and we would like, we are delighted to have here today with us some people from academia that have the societal role of shaping the knowledge of today and tomorrow. So after this introduction, I'll leave the floor to our guests for some questions, and then the last few minutes, we will have the Q&A, as I said before. So, GenAI in education. If we talk about GenAI, first of all, we need to define what AI is, and then secondly, what is Gen AI, generative AI. So artificial intelligence, as you may know, is a very broad term currently, but basing on the Oxford English Dictionary, we could define artificial intelligence, as you see, as the capacity of computers or other machines to exhibit or simulate intelligent behavior. It's a very broad definition, and in fact, it entails different fields. It could be intertwined with robotics, with drug discovery, with NLP, natural language processing, which is actually the expertise of the company Squirrel, which is the company today I'm representing. We do a search engine, and we are involved in knowledge management for big enterprises, which means that we ingest the data from companies into a singular platform and then use artificial intelligence and natural language processing technologies to extract information from text and then to rephrase those information with LLMs, with generative AI. So AI, as you probably know or have heard, could be roughly divided into 2 paths. One is predictive AI, and the second is generative AI. Those AI models that can produce and generate new content. And in the case of large language models, they could generate new textual content. So very shortly, because we don't have that much time, and I really want to hear what the guests want to say and want to share with us. Generative language models, LLMs, large language models, are models, AI models that could predict what could be the next word given a certain sequence of words. So again, in this example, Sergio likes to eat, and then the model is able to calculate the probability for a next word to follow that sequence. So again, here a type of food as chocolate will have a high possibility to occur there. Based on this, those models can generate, after having been trained on huge databases or smaller databases, they could generate new textual data. And that textual data could be then deployed among many different verticals. And the one that we are focusing on today is education. So if we have at our disposal a technology that can produce new textual content, the possibilities are really, really a lot. Based on this article that has been published this year and has been heavily cited, almost 300 citation, which for the field is quite a lot. Based on this survey, LLMs could actually be utilized for a variety of aims within education. They could be used for content generation, so producing new lessons. They could be used to tailor the educational experience based on students. They could be used to automatically assess the performance of both students and educators. So the possibilities are really endless. But now I would like to come to the ending of this very short introduction and set what is the role and what is the importance for Squirrel to be educated by educators. We work mainly in the knowledge management field. And as I said, we deployed an AI models and NLP technology to extract and reformulate information among databases. So what is the connection with educators? Here, to just sparkle a little bit the environment, I'd like to show you this quite complex but extremely interesting quote from Derrida, which is one of the most important philosophers of the last century, French philosopher. He says that the process of archivization, it's also the production of knowledge. What does it mean for industries? It means that for us, for Squirrel, which is a company that curates very big databases and therefore is involved in very huge processes of archivization, we have to be aware that from a societal point of view, we are also producing knowledge. Why? Because if me, Lee, Karen, and Heidi produce a new database based on which we then use generative AI to produce new educational content, new lessons, new exams, new tests, we basically are deciding what the knowledge will be for future generation. Therefore, the process of archivization that here Derrida explains so pointedly, it's also the production of knowledge, because if we select what should also be reshaped and then become an educational material, then I'm selecting what knowledge will be, especially if we as a company will in the future hopefully work along with educational institutions, academics, and other schools or other institutions. If we help educators with the production and advisement of educational material, we need for from the industrial point of view, to be aware of the societal implication, of the ethical implications of this process. And this is why I'm more than delighted to have here with us some very good and very brilliant educators. We already have engaged in very promising and very interesting conversation in the last couple months. So really, again, at this point, I'm presenting a few friends here to you today. So after this introduction and after having said why we at Squirrel need the prompts from educators to educate us on how to structure these databases and how to be ethical and how to pose the right questions. After having set this agenda, I'd like to leave the floor to the guests. So I noted down a few questions that I would like you to address. So I will start with Lee. And the first question that I have for you, again, very broad question to introduce this webinar, relates the ethical consideration. Lee, when it comes to generative AI, what do you think will be the impact of these technologies, and what are the ethical considerations that we should be aware of? What's your point of view on this?
Thank you, Simon, for introducing me and for the kind words, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about AI. I should say that my expertise is in social justice and education, not in AI, but we've had some very interesting conversations around issues with the use of AI in education. And for me, I'm driven by a commitment to, for example, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So, I think AI can really help shift the dial on achieving Sustainable Development Goal 4. But there are big questions, as you said, around the ethical use of AI. And a couple of questions that I always think of is, who benefits most and who should benefit most? And if we think about who benefits most, well, big tech, their motives are not altruistic, and their products are, in many cases, ubiquitous. I was reading a statistic that 90% of searches worldwide are performed by Google. So this raises questions around digital dependency. Would we be able to live without this technology if we started adopting it? And then we know that these big companies, and this is a term that you introduced me to, Simon, the term vendor lock-in, where you offer a product for free for a period of time until your users become so accustomed to it that they can't live without it. And then you start charging for that service. And, one example could be, Google Maps or any map app. How many of us would be able to do without our GPS navigator in our cars? So that's one issue, is the digital dependency. And of course, those countries and those institutions and contexts which have more resources also are going to win the AI race because they have more resources to invest in AI. So there is concerns about whether the introduction of AI might actually exacerbate existing inequalities. And I think that's something we need to be very mindful of.
Sure. Also, like about this, as we already discussed a few times together, I think it's very important, again, the fact that companies also need to tailor and to let the user or the educator in this case choose which provider and which model to deploy, because again, we spoke about also data bias a few times together, and again, some models have been trained on specific data, on specific databases that reflect a certain view, political view also sometimes. So it's really useful to break down those processes together and possibly engage in this type of discussions like industry and academics to see how to craft those processes in a more equal and in a more open and maybe in a more problematic way, but again, debating and discussing is the base for something ethical, because if not, without discussion, then we don't proceed. So second question that I have is for Karen this time. And Karen, I know that part of your research interest focuses on accessibility and inclusion. It's not the only one, because you research on many different topics, but this is one of the ones that grasped my attention. And I'd like in this case to ask you, do you see any potential for generative AI and for AI to help people and students and educators possibly also with visual impairments or with other types of impairments? What's your take on that?
Yeah, thanks again for the invitation. Well, that's a really good question. I think that most of us are very interested in maybe the way that AI can help people with disabilities. And maybe we can start talking about the fact that disability and the problems behind disability and technologies, it is a matter of oppression. It is a matter of power and the barriers that people with disabilities encounter when they are trying to have access to certain materials, education, or to certain areas in life. So definitely, I think that generative AI it has been helping. I wouldn't say that it's going to help a lot. I think that it has been helping recently a lot to people with visual impairment and other type of disabilities, since it is offering an opportunity to be more flexible in terms of access to information. One example could be the way that AI can generate text to speech and vice versa, speech to text. And that is a good start in terms of access to information. Additionally, today we can find that generative AI are able to manage in a faster way summarizing information, certain functions such as summarizing information, translating, and not only translating one language into another, but also translating sign language, for example. And there are so many options today that I believe that generative AI could be a great option for these people. So yeah, we have just started. And of course, these AI tools, they change a lot in a very short time, but well, the functions are already there and are very fully described, and I think that we can obtain more benefits in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you. So you mentioned the topic of language, of the capabilities of those models to handle different languages. So drawing from that, I'd like to make the third question, this time to Heidi. And this question relates the possibility for GenAI and for AI to help students and educators as for language learning and second language learning. Again, I see that as in the case of the other panelists, you have a very broad array of interests, but one of them is language acquisition, language learning. So, and second language acquisition, in your case, English. So I'd like to make this question. What are the possibilities there? Do you see any, or as an educator, as we spoke many times together, what would you need AI to do to help you teaching a second language? Or do you see any drawback and something that industry should be aware of when they construct something new?
Okay, thank you for the invitation too. I think that we have two groups of teachers in terms of professors. Those who are still resistant and against AI because they consider, for example, in terms of ethical consideration, that it's not possible that the students use AI for paraphrasing or for rewriting a paragraph. But on the other side, we have group of teachers that they are very happy, and we are in those groups. I mean, like we feel that definitely AI has been a useful tool for our lives, especially, for example, to simplify feedback. For example, to generate specific and personalized tests for students. You know that in a classroom we have different type of students, and this is something that is very useful. AI is useful because we can design a special tests and special quizzes for those students who have different needs and different wants. So I think that one of the obstacles could be that is training. I mean, like we as educators, we need to be trained how to use efficiently AI in terms of taking into account the ethical considerations, and also for the students. Also, students need to be trained. I mean, like the training is for both sides. The students need to be trained, educators need to be trained. So we need training, yes, to have a good use of AI in terms of ethical considerations. And I think that since we, for example, I think that we have 1 year using AI. And for example, our life is different. when we are going to design rubrics, for example, for our exams, and even, for example, to design lessons, special lessons, and also, but anyway, I think that also our role is to check, to examine what the AI has generated, because I think that is also easy. We cannot assume that they have like the last word. We need to check, because, for example, we are in Barranquilla, we are in a different context, and probably what AI considered could be used for our region, it's not good, because AI is, anyway, it's not like the last word. We as educators need to check what AI generates every time that we have. Thank you.
Thank you for this first answer and your addition to the conversation. Yeah, like, what from my side, what I would like to add is that many times this type of discussion, this type of we define from in this industrial perspective, this type of frameworks as human in the loop frameworks, which means that sometimes you could leave everything to an AI, or you could try to augment the capabilities of human beings and leave the most critical, the most creative part to the human being. So you leave a human in the loop. You have this loop, the technological loop that produces new content, maybe in a very, like, if you scale, so the bigger the system that you have, the more content you can have. But again, having someone, and in this case, an educator, checking the reliability, the quality of the outputs is essential, because it's not just about sounding correct, because these models sound correct. ChatGPT, which is the model that we use the most, when you query it with something, the answer seems always correct and reliable, but then we need experts having a domain knowledge in education, in social justice, in diversity and inclusion, within language acquisition, to then check and possibly like improving the quality of these models, both from an ethical way and for efficiency. So now another question that I'd like to make to all of you, all the three of you, and it's one of the already most complex question of the webinar, I think. Yeah, digital divide. I'd like to introduce the topic that has been touched already by some of the answers that you gave us. Do you see any problem, any issue that industry and educators need to address when deploy with these contexts, when deploy these technologies, sorry, in terms of exacerbating or non-exacerbating the digital divide? And also, like, from your perspective, what would you define as digital divide? What's the division for what type of digital? So very, very open, very complex question, but yeah. Who would you like to start?
Okay, so I mean, the way I understand digital divide, having worked in Colombia, I did my PhD online while I was working full-time in Colombia, and that's why I don't have much hair left, because the amount of times that the internet went and I was in the middle of writing a paragraph or in the middle of a meeting with my supervisor, and I simply could not complete the task because I did not have internet connectivity. I mean, I don't know how many days a month Barranquilla is without power, but my impression is, it's quite frequent. And then you go to then rural areas where, they may not have, regular access to electricity. And there may be, I mean, we saw this during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, how those from poorer backgrounds struggled more because they did not have the devices or the bandwidth which would enable them to use the internet. So you see the disparity created not by the technology itself, but by, you know, environmental, societal issues around access to that technology. And obviously on a global level, we see massive inequalities. And AI has the potential to exacerbate that because it's big tech based, you know, there's an association between AI and the Anglophone world. Most of these large language models use English, and not just English, but a particular kind of English, which kind of squeezes out and almost invisibilizes other forms of English. So it, you know, I think AI has the potential to have this homogenizing effect where we need to be respective of diversity and difference. And we also need to be careful of any kind of hegemonic processes which might lead to, you know, oppressive situations. Sorry, that was a bit long. What do you think, Karen and Heidi? Do I sum it up okay?
Yeah, definitely. When we think of this, well, it comes to my mind that there is global south and there is global north. There is something that is clear. I mean, in the global south, we have certain contexts in which AI, maybe some people are behind in terms of technology. I'm not saying not only AI, but in terms of technologies. And in fact, I was reading the last time that around 200 million people in Latin America, they don't have internet. So probably they don't even have an idea about what AI is doing right now. So yeah, definitely the gap is there. It's not an easy task to reduce it. But I would say that in terms of approaches and the philosophy behind that, maybe we can start thinking about how post-humanism can answer to these differences and to this division. Because maybe humanism at the beginning has maybe enlightened the path with their inventions and their reason and everything that it is around it. But we have to start thinking about the way that we can maybe assemble, that assemblage is maybe the word that we can say, maybe the way that we can connect with others, and not only with among people. Now we are talking about machines. We are now integrated with machines, and maybe I think that what we have to start doing is like exploring how post-humanistic perspectives can maybe bring some contributions to the way that we are analyzing AI in our lives. And well, not everything is bad. Currently, I was checking some information about in the way that we can reduce pollution and to make AI more sustainable. And maybe it is a good opportunity to move forward other types of energies. I was reading that maybe nuclear energy can help us with that to reduce the carbon print. I think that's the word that we use. And maybe AI is going to make us reflect more on that, since big companies are going to be more interested in finding new ways to get the energy and new resources. Yeah.
Heidi, would you like to add something?
Well, that says many things. But I think that it's important the role of the universities. I mean, like private universities and also with public universities. I mean that it's important maybe to even to have these conversations like us that we are having, also with the industry, but also with public sector, with private sectors, and how can both sectors can work together. Because we are working in a private university, maybe we have internet, we are having these conversations with you, yes, but what about, for example, a different type of university that they don't have this type of connection? So I think that now we are using AI Maybe we have 1 year using AI. But we have, for example, some colleagues that they are working in a different universities, in public universities, not in the Caribbean region, but they are working, for example, in Cauca or in a different region in Colombia, and they have serious difficulties even for connection. So I think that the role of universities is really crucial and essential to try to close the gap. Just that having the conversations between those, this division between private and public institutions, even schools. I think that public schools and private schools, they have like a division. I think that maybe a kind of competition, but I think that maybe our dreams, or I imagine like John Lennon's song, is that we need to work together. Private schools, public schools, private universities, public universities, global south, global north.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So as the audience has seen, also among us, the opinion are very diverse, very different. And yeah, I always think that, as I was mentioning at the beginning, having this type of conversation and hearing what are the concerns also, or the possibilities, or the pros and cons of utilizing those technologies is really very useful, because industry, like, you cannot stop the technology's advancements, but once something has started, you need to be aware of what are the nuances, what are the complications, what are the complexities and the ethical considerations that you should bring with you. So it's really, like, from an industrial point of view, it's really, really, really enriching to hear from you, like, what are your perspectives, what are your, also, like, what you see as problematic, because technologies and advancements function, and also from a market perspective, they work good if they are sustainable, because just one error in a sensitive field and then you're not believed, you're not trusted anymore as a company. So it's ethical, it's a type of ethics that is important for society, but also, again, it's also important for the markets, So again, it's sometimes complex to hear different opinions, because then to bring everything together needs reflection, needs work, but it's really useful, really useful. So thank you for all the opinions you shared till now. So, and drawing again on this line, I would like to make a question to Lee. We all know that you are the person here that has the strongest expertise in social justice. So, and you shared also some concerns, some problematics that you see in the deployment of this technology, especially when they scale up. So I would like to ask you, do you see any steps that educational institution could and need to take to prevent those biases? Do you see any steps that, or also any steps that industry can help educational institution to take, just to be constructive on this topic? Let's
very big questions. It's difficult to know where to start, because yes, there is bias in AI, and it does maybe have a homogenizing effect because of the data sets that it's trained on, which means that, for example, Black speakers might be less likely to be recognized, and male voices might be more easily recognized, and obviously speaking in non-standard English will make it hard for you to be recognized as well. So there are biases there, but are those biases any greater than the human biases? I mean, I was thinking about one example. As a teacher and as a teacher educator, I observe other teachers, and I am observed by other teachers. And this observation process is part and parcel of teaching. Yeah, we always get feedback on our teaching, and somebody says, oh yeah, maybe you should have spent more time on this activity, or maybe you should have clarified what the students were supposed to be doing. Yeah, but having your boss, which is usually the case, come into your classroom and say, okay, I'm judging your teaching. Teach in the way that I expect you to teach. I am assessing the quality of your teaching. That is an anxiety-inducing experience for many teachers, myself included. If you've ever had a bad observation, it was because the person observing you felt they didn't really understand what you were doing. Maybe they had an issue with you. Maybe they were in a bad mood. That is a job that could be replaced by AI. And I don't think many people would say, well, that's a bad thing. So there is bias in AI, but the AI could, for example, record your teacher talk, the language that you use in the classroom, and categorize that teacher talk for you into useful teacher talk and what we sometimes do, which is waffling, what we call a running commentary, where you're talking for the sake of talking, maybe you're nervous. And the AI can give you feedback, and you can't really get angry with ChatGPT for the feedback that it gives you. So I think, yeah, there is bias in AI, but when you compare it sometimes with human biases, and of course the bias in AI is partly there because they've been programmed by humans. To your question about what institutions and universities can do to kind of mitigate this bias. Well, I mean, most universities have an equality, diversity, inclusion agenda or policy, and they're also committed towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So I would say, they should be considering any AI use within the frame of those, the commitment to the SDGs, to those Sustainable Development Goals, and to EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion. And I think something else which I think should be added to this debate is, as a teacher, change is often done to you, and you are not an agent of that change. And so if an institute decides, okay, we are going to roll out this AI technology, if it hasn't come from the bottom up, if it's coming from the top down, it's less likely to be implemented effectively. Yeah, so you need to get teachers on board, you need to train those teachers, and ultimately you need to listen to their valid concerns about, okay, I don't think this is appropriate in this context. And one example of that, we've seen the rollout of interactive whiteboards in contexts globally. And they did this in places like Chile, and these technologies were never used. So it was an institutional decision, top-down decision, but there was no buy-in from the teachers, and also no money left to train those teachers in how to use these technologies. So in the end, these technologies were not implemented effectively. So I think just implementing the technology in educational settings is not going to lead to better outcomes for learners. And it might have the unintended consequence of annoying teachers who feel like their agency and their voice doesn't matter. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. And okay, so Lee, you are based in the UK. So we could say that you are in the global north. So let's hear now what are the concerns, or what, again, similar, same question, same type of question. Karen and Heidi, what do you feel that could be like? The answer from Lee highlights the fact that AI deployment and implementation in an educational setting also needs to be backed up with proper education, because if not, not only doesn't work, but it's a result in a waste of money and time. So do you feel, Karen and Heidi, that something also that concern the global south or the other side of the world? Like I'm based in Zurich, Lee is in the UK, you are in Barranquilla. Is it there something different or equal, or what's your opinion?
Okay, I think that we have the same. I mean, like, we have the similar situations. I mean, that sometimes the decisions, or most, it's not sometimes, I say most of the time decisions are, and I mean, like, top. I mean, that they don't take into account our voices. I mean, that it is something that is not new. And for example, I was like 2 months ago, we have been receiving some ethical considerations that we have to take into account when we are using ChatGPT with our students. And I was asking, okay, who wasn't that committed? That committed, they were just administrators. I mean, like, educators were not invited to be part of that committed in terms of writing or defining the ethical considerations when we are going to use, for example, ChatGPT in our classes. And I think it's just an example. I mean, why we were not invited? I mean, that we are in front of our students using ChatGPT. But I think we have the same situations in global north, global south. I mean, that's most of the times we have just to well follow. I mean, like our, and I think that as conclusions, voices needs to be heard. But well, I think that just is not our. Even we have the assumption that there in the global north that they have a different consumption. I mean that their voices are heard. But now we have noticed that most of the time, maybe we have the same situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if anyone from the audience in the last few minutes has any question, any opinion to share, or anything. Let's give them a few seconds. If not, I do have another last question. Oh, there's one though.
The question is, where should universities start? I guess that is extending your question about where should universities start in implementing AI in the, is that the?
I think so. From my understanding, I could hypothesize, but we could be corrected, that the question refers to what are the constructive steps that university should take. Again, if there's something pragmatical that they could, any pragmatical step they could take. For example, literally initiating a statement as for we need as educators to be educated on AI. So a pragmatical program and say, okay, we need an education on A, B, C, because without those topics, we are not aware of what are the technology that we could possibly use and what are the concerns for those technology. Like, I think that question could possibly refer to that, pragmatical steps that university could take to deploy AI.
I mean, I think this is already happening. I mean, Karen and Heidi, you're already using AI. I'm using AI. It's become my go-to now because it never gets annoyed with me. You know, it doesn't matter how many times I shout or scream, the AI will just say, don't worry, you know, here's the next bit of information you're asking for. So I think it's happening informally and probably organically, but I think it's a very good question because I think universities are struggling to develop policies that can capture this revolution that is happening. I think one of the problems is it's moving so fast and we still haven't really thought through all of the implications for it. But from a pedagogical perspective, I think AI should always be at the service of pedagogy. So, institutions should ask themselves whether adopting AI really benefits learners, teachers, and the learning experience. And if they can justify clearly, yes, this benefits learners, teachers, and the learning experience, then yes, it can be adopted. Students are free to use AI. There's no policy on them not using AI. There are policies regarding getting ChatGPT to write your assignments, but Grammarly now has AI built in. And universities are encouraging students to use these technologies in order to improve their writing. So it's already happening, and we hopefully can try to capture some of that change in our research collaboration, and also some of the reasons why it may not be happening. And maybe there are some enabling policies which universities can introduce, which are respective of the agency of every teacher. No teacher likes to be told how to teach or what to teach and how to, yeah. So, and I think the best teachers are the ones that can make those pedagogical decisions without them being, foisted on them from above. So I think if we can create a space where the policy allows and maybe enables the use of AI technology, but does not dictate it, and allows decisions about its use to be left to the teacher, because ultimately it's the teacher who knows the students the best and is most familiar with the context. And contextualized solutions, we know from education, are much better than piecemeal solutions which are applied in all contexts at all times.
Okay. Okay, unfortunately, our time together for today, at least, is coming to an end. As you see, as the audience sees, we already debated those topics for a few hours together. So we literally have, any time that we gather back, we have so many things to discuss all over again, because again, I see that from a personal point of view, it's very insightful from an industrial perspective to see what academics have to say on all these topics, because of the freedom of thought that you are being given in academia. And that is something that really strengthen the relationship between different parts of society, the industry and academia. So thank you again for being here today, to the three of the speakers that I was delighted to attend the webinar with, and thank you for all the attendees that have remained here till the ending, and speak to you all soon. This is the first webinar of a few webinars, of a series of webinars, hopefully. So if you liked this format, keep in touch and reach out to us. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.